Hello, Morgan. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Tammy. Welcome back, welcome back. Alright, because I have a lot of stories to continue. If you haven't already, please go back and watch part 1. I'm going to continue down the stories of the folklore from the Appalachian. Hello, Angie. Alright, the first story I have for everybody tonight is about the little people. I have a couple of them that I'm going to talk about. 5 little people from the Southeast. The indigenous people of the American Southeast lived alongside one another long enough that many of their beliefs about the little folk have at least partially blended together. Carolyn Dunn wrote a short article on the Southern little people. These creatures are very good at not being seen. They are selective about whom they permit to see them at all, generally only children or medicine people. Hello, Haley. Hello, Luna. Glad you could make it. If we think of little folk as a species, then we're dealing with a number of closely related subspecies that generally display the following characteristics. I completely forgot to mention that. They are more often mischievous than truly evil. Although their pranks can be quite destructive, it is unwise to speak disrespectfully even of those who are well diagnosed or disposed toward humans, however, as they are quick to take offense. They are often more kindly-hearted toward children, often leading them home when they get lost in the forest. They live deep in the forest or in other way natural settings. They are often, but not always, associated with the healing arts. Many of these groups, in fact, serve as spiritual helpers to healers and herbalists, and are often instrumental in initiating youngsters into the healing arts. So let's get into 5 types of the southern little folk, arranged roughly from north and east to south and west. First up are, I'll put the names in the comments actually. Alright. The pronunciations may be a little messed up, so I put them in the chat as I go. The Yunwi Susundi. There are 2 promised groups of fairy-like beings in the Cherokee legend. They are the Nanunhe, the tall spirit warriors, which I'll put that in the chat. Hello, M. They are the tall spirit warriors who are indistinguishable from ordinary humans, except for their magical powers. And the Yunwi yeah, I can't pronounce it. It's in the comments. I tried it once. Hi, Mom. The Yunwi Jun's Day, or aka the Little People, child-sized beings who lived in the rocks and cliffs. Like the Nananhe, the Yunwi preferred to be invisible, although they do sometimes appear to humans. Seeing them, however, is sometimes taken as an omen of impending death. They are well proportioned and handsome, with hair that reaches almost to the ground. The Yunwe are depicted as helpful, kind, and magical adept. Like many fairy creatures, they love music and spend much of their time singing, drumming, and dancing. For all this, they have a very gentle nature and do not like to be disturbed. Even so, they are said to harshly punish those who are disrespectful or aggressive towards them. In Cherokee lore, the Yunwe are divided into 3 clans with varying attitudes towards humans. The Rock clan is most malicious, the Laurel clan is merely mischievous, and the Dogwood clan is most benevolent. The next set of little people I want to talk about are the Yehasari people. I'm going to put that in the comments. Yehasuri. These Catawba little folk, whose name can be translated roughly to the wild people, are about 2 feet tall and usually depicted as hairy. They are trickster spirits that live in the forest. They often live in tree stumps and eat a varied dried, including acorns, roots, fungi, turtles, tadpoles, frogs, and bugs. I'm so happy you do this, because I would suck at guessing the spelling, listening first, then notes after. Yeah, I have to put it in the comments because I will butcher the heck out of these names, and I already know this. The little folk are said to behave in ways very similar to the fairies of Europe. They kidnap children, for example, and like to braid the manes and tails of horses. Like the elves of northern Europe, their magical arrows are deadly to mortals. They are said to attack anyone who gets too close to them. One of their favorite tricks is to prowl around after dark and place spells on any children's clothing that had been hung up to dry. This bewitched clothing would give babies colickiness, therefore conscientious Catawba mothers would bring in their infants' clothes at dusk, wet or dry. The Yahasuris are sometimes used as boogeymen to impress upon children the importance of good behavior. Indeed, they do seem to target children more than anyone else. The only way to stop them is to rub tobacco on one's hands and recite a particular incantation against them. Oop, I went a little too far. Sorry. I'm gonna just type this one in the comments a while. The next little people I want to talk about, I'm gonna butcher because it's a different language, but it is in the comments. It's the Polk, maybe Polke. I'm not 100% sure. As with the Cherokee, the Muscogee people, Creeks, and Seminoles, I'll actually put that in there as well. Creeks and Seminoles distinguish between two sorts of little people, one taller and the other shorter. And among the shorter, some are more benign and others are more harmful to humans. Thank you, Morgan. I appreciate you. I was very close. Very close. George E. Langford reports the observation in the 1800s. The Creek Indians call them, what she said, or little people, but distinguish two sorts, the one being longer, the others shorter in stature. The taller ones are called from this very peculiarity. Gosh, I can't speak. The tall people. The shorter, the dwarfish ones, subdivide themselves again and are the cause of crazed condition to the mind, which makes Indians run away from their lodges. Native American Legends of the Southeast University of Alabama Press, 1987 to 2011, page 133. I don't know if this tracks perfectly with the Cherokee distinction, but the taller Nananhe and a number of other clans or tribes of shorter Yunwe, but it seems at least plausible. Sorry. The Estelapoke live in hollow trees on treetops and or rocky cliffs. Their homes can be identified by an extra thick growth of small twigs of branches in the trees. Despite their small size, they appear strong and handsome with fine figures and long but well-kept hair. They might let their toenails grow long, however. These beings are especially known to appear to medicine people and guide them in finding the herbs they need. Encounters with the little people are considered sacred and not to be shared. The Muskogee sometimes speak of the little people simply as G, meaning little, so as to avoid using their full name. Even the helpful ones object to being mentioned in a negative or disrespectful way. And then the next one I have for you, I'm going to put in the chat, is the Iya Ganasha. Again, I'm going to butcher these names drastically. So I'm gonna put that in the comments. Yeah, me too, Mom. Me too. The little folk of Chickasaw lore are sometimes identified as tribal ancestors who now take up residence in the forest. They are said to be about 3 feet tall. Although they might help those who are in trouble, they are also likely to play tricks on those who have offended them. They allow themselves to be seen only to a few, mostly hunters or medicine people. They do, however, interact with children. Sometimes they choose a child to live among them for a while to be given special powers of healing. When this child grows up, he or she becomes a healer or herbalist. They might teach other children how to pursue game, as they are accomplished hunters themselves. Even so, it is considered ill-advised to live near the name that I put in the chat. The Chickasaw would move away from an area if they thought there were little people there. The worst enemy of those people is the wasp, the sting of which is fatal to them. And then M says, listen, I think you're doing much better than most would with the pronunciations. Oh, thank you, M. I appreciate it. I'm trying my best. Certain words I'm just not even going to try. The last one I have for you is the Katak Awasa. I'm gonna put that in the chat as well. Katak Awasa. No. Hold on. Let me fix my comment. No. Delete. Fix. My phone likes to autocorrect today, apparently. Bear with me. There we go. Thanks, Haley. I appreciate you as well. Yeah, me and autocorrect just aren't working together, I guess. Okay. So, and it still auto-corrected me wrong. Bear with me. That's supposed to be an A. An H. Huh. There. Maybe I think no. Why does it keep adding an A at the end? I don't understand. H-A-T-A. Okay. There. Now it has officially let me do what I wanted. Okay. The Hatakawasa. There are several types of little folk among the Choctaw. One, Cowie Anukasha. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. Anukasha. Here's that one as well. Serves much the same role as the Chickasaw and the Muskogee little folk in initiating young children into medicinal lore. Another type, simply called the Hatakawasa little men, are similar to both the boogeymen and little folk of European myth. Children are warned to be good lest the Hatakawasa snatch them away. Although their role can be sinister, they also preserve otherworldly knowledge handed down from olden times. Alright, and then moving along, going into the Irish-Scottish folklore, amongst coming over and settling into the Appalachian Mountains, the Irish not only brought their beliefs, way of life, and cultural medicines, they also are believed to have brought some creatures that haunt their old lands with them. Let's dive into a few of them as well. Let me get a drink real quick. The first one I have for you is the Banshee. What is a Banshee? A Banshee is said to be a fairy in Irish legend, and her scream is believed to be an omen of death. The scream is also called Keowen. I'm going to put that in the chat. Which means keening, and is a warning that there will be an imminent death in the family, and as the Irish families blended over time, it is said that each family has its own banshee. Yes, Germans did also. Oh, thanks, Sherry. I appreciate it. It was a gift. A banshee is a disembodied spirit and can appear in any of the following forms. Hi, Billy Joe. No worries. I didn't realize there was a rich Irish folklore in the mountains, too. I love how it seems like there's such a cultural melting pot in the craft. Yes, absolutely. And that is why I wanted to bring forth the folklore that comes into Appalachian folk magic. Anyway, sorry. The following forms: a beautiful woman wearing a shroud, a pale woman in a white dress with long red hair, a woman with a long silver dress and silver hair, a headless woman carrying a bowl of blood that is naked from the waist up, an old woman with frightening red eyes, a green dress, and long white hair, an old woman with a veil covering her face, dressed all in black with long gray hair. Sorry, I accidentally hit a button on my thingy. Origins. Historians have traced the first stories of the Banshee to the 8th century, which were based on a tradition where women sang a sorrowful song to lament, gosh, I can't speak, lament someone's death. These women were known as keeners, and since they accepted alcohol as payment, they were said to be sinners and punished by being doomed to become banshees. According to the mythology of the banshee, if she is spotted, she will vanish into a cloud of mist, and this action creates a noise similar to that of a bird flapping its wings. Legend says the banshees don't cause death, they only serve as a warning of it. Banshees, the good and bad. Not all banshees are hate-filled creatures. There are some that had strong ties to their families in life and continue to watch over them in death. When they manifest themselves, these banshees appeared as beautiful, enchanting women that sing a sorrowful, haunting song which is filled with concern and love for their families. This song can be heard a few days before the death of a family member, and in most cases, the song can only be heard by the person for whom it is intended. Other Irish mythology stories relating to the Banshees say that she is the ghost of a young girl that suffered a brutal death, and her spirit remains to warn family members that a violent death is imminent. It is said that this banshee appears as an old woman with rotten teeth and long fingernails. She wears rags and has blood-red eyes that are so filled with hate that looking directly into them will cause immediate death. This banshee's mouth is always open as her piercing scream torments the souls of the living. According to some tales, there are evil banshees that derive pleasure from taking a life, and they actively seek out their victims and wail at them to the point where the person commits suicide or goes insane. There are even banshees that can tear people to shreds, and these horrific apparitions are what feature in modern-day horror films. It is important to note that banshees do not bring death, however. They warn of it and give the family time to prepare for inevitable. Not me showing up 22 minutes later. I will catch the start and the replay, no worries. I was just talking about banshees today coming. Ha! That's awesome. It must be the night for it. Some hidden knowledge. No one is actually sure where banshees get their knowledge of a person's death from. One theory suggests that each family member has his own personal observer who follows him around and reports back to the banshee. However, this is a belief that is slowly dying out, as is the tale of the banshee, which is now regarded as nothing more than a spooky bedtime story. Many centuries ago, belief in banshees was more widespread in Ireland, and being a disbeliever was said to be blasphemous. Perhaps you have a grandparent who still holds this belief. For the rest of us, the legend of the banshee falls into myth and superstition category. Morgan says Banshee translates to fairy woman. Angel, am I timing to log on right now? No doubt. The next one I have for you is the puka. I'm gonna put that in the chat as well for those of you who would like to know the spelling. The holiday known as Halloween in modern times actually has ancient origins tracing back to the Irish pagan origins. Irish folklore is definitely unique. What are the puka? I went a little too far. They are shape-shifting troublemakers. Legends say that the puka can change into horses, goats, cats, donkeys, bulls, dogs, foxes, wolves, and hares. Though always with jet black fur, horses bearing sleek coats, wild manes, and flaming eyes are the most common animal shape of these mischievous fairies. When in human form, these fairies still bear animalistic characteristics. Though stories about the puka are vague and varied, one common similarity is the puka's love of mischief. Mischief can take many forms, but one of the favorite with the puka seems to be taking their preferred animal form of a great black horse and enticing the unwitting rider on its back for a wild and terrible horseback ride through the night. Usually this person has been drinking, and even if they haven't, they bewitch them, leaving them with a bad feeling and hazy recollections of the night poorly spent. As you can imagine, that would frighten anyone, though little actual harm is done. Sometimes the puka can serve as a protective entity, helping farmers with the crops, offering presents, or intervening ahead of a terrible accident to prevent harm. Though stories are kindly puka are overshadowed by those of the mischief, bad luck, or even doom. Then again, there are some stories darker still, calling the creatures bloodthirsty and accusing the puka of being evil creatures that hunted and killed humans. It seems the stories are pretty well varied, and there are many types of fairies in Ireland. Where are the puka? Being a fairy woman, I wonder how hagstones affect them. I now want to know that answer too, Em. So, the puka is a royal being. Many traditions associate them with the agricultural and the Celtic harvest calendar. The puka is generally thought to inhabit Ireland's most remote places. So when they brought them over, they brought them to what they thought were to help them with their harvest season. They believe they brought over the good spirits from Ireland with them to help them during their harvest seasons, as they were learning the different seasons that we have over here. Moving along. It is said that the puka and Halloween are very heavily associated, and or Samhain, as it is known in Ireland. Samhain is an ancient pagan festival, as we all know. After Samhain, sorry, I accidentally hit a button. After Samhain, farmers left the fields to winter, leaving the remains of the undesirable crops. Such crops are puka touched by the fairies and therefore left to them. Fairy-conscious farmers would take it one step further and leave a puka share of crops out to appease the mischievous beings and dissuade them from causing the farmer any harm. If this sounds familiar, it should. On the night of Samhain, when the people believed the curtain between our world and the spirit world to be at its thinnest, Irish people would, and often still do, leave out offerings, usually food, to appease the fairies and keep them from harming the people in the house. Disguises were used to confuse the fairies and spirits, and vegetables like turnips carved with gruesome faces to scare them away. We now do the carving of pumpkins. In modern times, the pagan practices passed on down to trick-or-treating with the children, designing and wearing scary costumes, pumpkin carving. If the fairies have Halloween night, then the puka have November 1st. By November, the harvest is finished and anything left is spoiled. The puka are blamed. They must have ruined anything that remained in the fields. By the day after Samhain, wild berries and other fruits have shriveled and died, so the puka must have spit on them and left them spoiled. And yet November 1st is the one day a year during which the puka are reputed for their civility. Morgan, fairy as the Cindy in Banshee, yes. Billy Joe, yes I do. If it's too loud, I apologize, I can turn it down. I would love to read your comment, but give me a moment, I got a pop-up notification. There we go. My kids and I left out honey, bread, and milk this year, yes. I was sitting here for a few minutes trying to figure out where music was coming from and realized it was the live, lol, my bad. Alright, the next one that I have for you is the black dog. A common motif in folklore is the apparition of the large black dog. Depending on the story, the dog may either stay at a distance or come close enough that their fire-like eyes are scorched into the observer's memory. These spectral canines make appearances as an omen of impending death in some tales. In others, they serve as protectors or gentle reminders of deceased loved ones. We find them intermingled in stories of witches and ghosts, and some are even famous enough to be named, such as Black Shuck. Although the black dogs with actual monikers are exciting in their own right, the aim of this is to give you some lesser-known ones. In Appalachian folklore, a sure indicator of impending death is a stray black dog following you. However, the mere appearance of a black dog should not cause immediate alarm. Perhaps the dog has a message. In 1937, an article ran in the Bluefield Daily Telegraph out of Bluefield, West Virginia, that recounts the story of lovers who were slain shortly after trying to elope against the wishes of their feuding fathers. During the night, they stole away together in hopes of wedding in Huntingdon. They were murdered, however, before they made it to their destination. A few months later, their bones were found, giving their families the smallest bit of closure. It is said that travelers still see a beautiful black dog manifest near the spot the murder took place, forever keeping the memory of the lovers alive throughout time. Eerily similar to what we are currently reading in the news, Kentucky newspapers in the early months of 1899 covered deaths on near daily basis from an illness that doctors could not explain, which was meningitis. In the span of roughly 25 days, Henderson County had lost 39 citizens by the official court, although the doctors were positive that many more had fallen victim to the scourge in rural areas and were therefore not included in the statistics. It was a terrifying time, as some patients were dying in as little as 12 hours after the initial onset of symptoms, and all ages were affected. The medical community was honest with the citizens of the area, admitting that they were not sure how to fight the illness. that was spreading through means that they had yet not understood. Meningitis claimed at least 3 members of a single family in that county. One of the deceased, James Bruce, was a young husband who left behind his widow. After a few hours of the funeral, his wife returned to their home so she could spend a few moments in the room where he had died. Upon entering the room, the hearth was fully ablaze, although no one had started such a fire that day. Shockingly, she saw her husband sitting in a chair in front of the fireplace. Under great duress, she fled to another area of the house, fainting at the feet of her brother. When she awoke, she explained that she had seen what she had seen. Her brother went to investigate the room. He did not see anyone sitting in the chair. However, instead, he saw a large black dog curled up in front of the fireplace. He kicked at the dog, and it responded by standing upright and vanishing before his eyes. The family moved out immediately, and the owner of the property posted a reward of $10, equivalent to nearly $311 today, for anyone who would come stay in the house for a night. Still a slightly different take on the black dog phenomenon is a story recorded by Ruth Ann Mussick in the Coffin Hollow and Other Ghost Tales. This Pennsylvania-based tale took place in the American Revolution. The story goes that the British soldiers captured a spy and his black dog. The spy was sentenced to death. Fearing his fate, he attempted to escape, but was cruelly slaughtered by one of the British soldiers in the process. His dog tried in vain to defend his master, but both the dog and the spy were kicked and stabbed to death. The following night, the same black dog was seen by other British soldiers near the campfire, but it vanished before anyone could approach it. The soldier who butchered the dog was on guard duty that evening. During the night, other soldiers were awoken by a combination of their comrades' screams and the sounds of a dog's growl. When he finally tore himself away from this encounter, it was clear that the soldier was in shock but physically unharmed despite his clothing being completely destroyed. This bizarre encounter repeated itself 2 more nights, with the growling and screaming ceasing only when the soldier ultimately died of fright. The remaining British soldiers never saw the black dog again. Alright, let me catch up on the comments a little bit. Blackbirds come... Whoa, where did I go? Come talking at your window. Someone in the house is going to die. Tapping. Yep. Hello, Carol. No worries. I'm gonna take a drink, and then I'm gonna go jump right on into the next story. The next one I have for you is the will-o-wisp. In Scottish folklore, the will-o-wisp are variously depicted either as mischievous spirits, typically fairies, or even the ghosts of the dead, eager to lead travelers off their path and into their death. Before I get too far, I want to put that in the comment as well. Anyway, moving on. For weary, tired travelers, especially those fearing they may have gotten lost, there is little that can inspire more hope than the sighting of a light, especially come nighttime. It is not surprising, then, that myths about the will-o'-the-wisp have sprung all over the world, from Europe and Asia to the Americas. In Scottish folklore, will-o'-the-wisp are variously depicted either as mischievous spirits, typically fairies, or even the ghosts of the dead, eager to lead travelers off their paths and into their death. The lights typically appear close to a bog, marsh, or swamp, places where straying off the beaten path can become dangerous or even deadly. Most of the myths associated with the will-o'-the-wisp, known in Latin as Ignis you know what? I'm going to put that in the chat too. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Here we go. Foolish fire, aka, show a malevolent, mischievous, even outright cruel creature. Few myths, however, show the will-o'-the-wisp leading those brave enough to follow the light in the middle of the dark night to a vast treasure and riches beyond comprehension. Some believe that the spirits behind the will-o'-the-wisp were souls who could enter neither heaven nor hell and were thus forced to wander the earth forever. Others think the devil himself was behind those attacks, instructing spirits to return to earth with the sole purpose of leading others astray. For yet others, the will-o'-the-wisp had a function similar to that of a banshee, becoming an omen of an upcoming tragedy. Uniquely, in Sweden, the will-o'-the-wisp is a manifestation of an unbaptized soul who tries to lead travelers into bodies of water into hopes of being baptized. A light floating in the darkness might seem innocent, even friendly, but don't be deceived. These attractive lights are almost always malevolent. They lead travelers into dangerous land, perhaps a deep hole in a bog or a kingdom ruled by vicious fairies. The backstory of the will-o'-the-wisp can shed some light on their cruel nature. The lights were carried by spirits who are shut out of both heaven and hell. The classic will-o'-the-wisp is carried by a blacksmith named Will. Will was such a troublemaker that when he died and went to heaven, he was sent back by St. Peter, who told him to reform during his second life. Unfortunately, Will's second life was even more monstrous than his first, so St. Peter cursed him to roam the earth forever. The devil, impressed by Will's evil doing, gave him a coal of to warm himself on the cold earth nights. Instead, Will decided to use the coal to make a torch and lure innocent travelers into danger. In other places, goblins, pixies, witches, unbaptized children, or even the devil are blamed for carrying these dangerous lights. Some special abilities are to dazzle and tantalize travelers. Will-o'-the-wisp are powerful omens. They appear to be able to predict the future, appearing to people before their deaths, or flocking to the site of a tragedy before it takes place. They might also reveal the place where a thief or a fairy has buried golden treasure. Whew, sorry, bear with me. The will-o'-the-wisp appear in Europe's written record around the 13th century, but their legend was well known all across the world long before pen was put to paper. The oral traditions of the Cornish, Nordic, and Aborigine people, I will put that in the chat as well, warn against the dangers of these phantom lights. Outside of these, some other creatures that are believed to have come along over with these settlers were their fae folk. I personally am not going to go into detail on their lore, because Serenity did a live on that this year, on the fae folk. But to list a few: leprechauns, sprites, fairies, and others. It is said that they battled the little people that were already inhabiting the Appalachia until they all learned to work together in harmony. wisp made me think of the whip poor Wilp automatically when I saw you type that. Wisps and Brave, although I know that was Disney. Sorry, I'm a Celtic nerd and was raised by Northern Appalachian grandparents. No worries. Before I get into the last one that I actually have for you guys tonight, is there any questions, comments, or concerns thus far? I was raised differently with the will-o-wisp and phantom lights. Wisps are those who try to get out danger, where phantom lights try to get you in danger. Yeah, like I said, there is many different versions of the will-o-wisps. I looked, and when I was doing my research on them, I came across so many stories, and I tried to fit in as many of them as many versions of them as I could. Alright, and the last one I have for you tonight is the Mothman. On November 12th, 1966, a group of gravediggers hard at work in Clendenin, West Virginia, noticed something out of the ordinary. They glanced up from their ditches to see something massive soaring overhead. It was darting from tree to tree. The gravediggers later described this entity as a huge brown-winged human being. The gravediggers were scared, which says a lot considering their occupation. They had no idea what to make of this winged beast. That's the first reported sighting of the Mothman, an elusive creature that remains just as frightening and mysterious as it was when the first few witnesses laid eyes upon it. Just 3 days later, after their initial report, witnesses in the nearby town of Point Pleasant noticed a winged creature about 6 or 7 feet tall. Standing in front of a car they were in. Eyewitnesses Roger Scarberry and Steve Mallett told the local paper at the time, the Point Pleasant Register, that the creature donned a 10-foot wingspan, red eyes, and an urge to avoid the headlights of a vehicle. According to witnesses, the creature could fly at ridiculously fast speeds, upwards of 100 miles per hour. The beast chased the witnesses to the outskirts of town, and then it ran into a field and disappeared. They knew it sounded absurd, a flying giant moth with red eyes terrorizing cars. Scarberry assured the paper that if he had seen it by himself, he wouldn't have said anything, but 4 people saw the Mothman that day. It couldn't have just been a figment of his imagination. Reporters were skeptical naturally. Folks believed the Mothman was nothing more than an overgrown owl or an eagle. The reporters did print Mallett's description of the creature. It was a man with wings. More and more sightings began to occur, and the legends of Mothman started to take shape. The Gettysburg Times reported 8 additional sightings 3 days after the first report. They included 2 volunteer firefighters who said they saw a huge bird with glowing red eyes. One Salem, West Virginia resident reported seeing strange patterns on his television and then hearing mysterious noises outside his home. As he shined a flashlight toward the direction of the noise, he witnessed 2 red eyes glowing like reflectors back at him. Some believe that the Mothman was even responsible when this resident's dog went missing, and that this fearsome creature stole a beloved pet. Is there a logical explanation, as I like to always include if I can? Just to give every perspective. Dr. Robert L. Smith, an associate professor of wildlife at West Virginia University, stated that a flying monster was never stalking the town. He attributed the sightings to a large sandhill crane, which stands as tall as a man and has bright red skin around his eyes. Some people took this explanation and ran with it, stating that the crane must have been deformed, especially if he lived in a nearby area that was once filled with nearby bunkers used to manufacture ammunitions during World War II. Perhaps these bunkers leaked toxic chemicals into the wildlife preserve and created a monster crane. Another theory suggests that the Mothman was just a prank, and when the press began to report the topic, people in the small town of Point Pleasant started to panic. Locals were convinced they saw the Mothman daily, and it's worth noting that the Mothman's physical appearance resembles several types of demons encountered during bouts of sleep paralysis. Maybe these visions are nothing more than human fears incarnate, a trick of the mind, a strange entity pulled from the subconscious of fearful locals. The Silver Bridge collapse, however, tells a different tale. On December 15th of 1967, just over a year after the Mothman was first seen, the Silver Bridge was packed with cars. The bridge was placed under extreme strain. The bridge was initially made for lighter cars, Model Ts only weighing 1,500 pounds. Modern cars were over 4,000 pounds. The bridge engineers weren't too cautious or imaginative when creating the bridge, and when one part of the bridge failed, the rest followed suit. Without warning, a single eye-bar near the top of the bridge on the Ohio side cracked. The chain snapped and the bridge fell to pieces, plunging people and cars into the icy waters of the Ohio River below. 46 people died by drowning, hypothermia, or being crushed by the wreckage. The bridge collapse was the second bizarre thing that put Point Pleasant on the map following the Mothman sightings. It wasn't long before the two cases were connected and the Mothman was blamed for the bridge's failure. Point Pleasant's fame as home of the Mothman continues to this day. Movies and books have been written about the subject, and the Mothman has been kept very much alive throughout the decades. There even exists the idea that the Mothman predicts disasters. He is seen standing atop a newly constructed bridge just before disasters, including the Mexican swine flu outbreak of 2009 and even the 2011 nuclear disaster in Fukushima, Japan. Sightings of the Mothman have slowly declined since the 60s, but every so often a sighting emerges. In 2016, a man who had recently moved in the area saw a creature jumping from tree to tree. Just like in the original report, he claimed that he had been unaware of the legend until he saw the beast himself. The legend of the Mothman lives on in museums. A 12-foot-tall chrome statue of the beast and Mothman plushies being held in the arms of children as they visit the many gift shops of the town. And they also have a Mothman Festival, which celebrates one of America's strangest local legends. Is there any questions? Questions, comments, or concerns? I'm gonna catch up on the comments real quick. Let's see. Sherry says, I am loving this because it shows different perspectives and beliefs. Yes, I agree. My mom says that is interesting. Billy Joe, oh, the Mothman. And Morgan says, don't eat chicken on New Year's Day or you'll be scratching for cash all year long. Sherry responded back to my mom. Carol says, I've never heard of this. Billy Joe says, crazy stories and sightings on this one. Angel says, I saw a YouTube video on this a move or so ago. Month. Ha! I even read it the same way. Mothman is one of my favorite legends since I learned about it. Even getting a tattoo of it. That's neat, Sherry. Sorry, the comments keep jumping. I do apologize as I scroll. I like the Jersey Devil as well, Morgan. Sherry says, amazing live yet. Just a general, but I do wonder if we would approach these tales from modern day standpoints, as in if we would view these beings as evil like they did. No, I agree. That's a good idea good thing to think about. You're so welcome, Tammy. If there is no more, no questions or anything, I am going to end this live. Continue to do your research. I gave you some famous ones and not so famous ones to give you guys an idea of how the settlers blended in with those who are already here, so that you can get an idea of how to properly work with the Appalachian magic. No, I see no questions. You're welcome, ladies. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday night. And I'm going to leave you with this. Blessed be, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a good rest of your evening. Bye. As soon as I can get this stupid connection thing to go away.